In fact, I'm going to hold off on this. As I'm starting to talk, I wanted to talk a little bit today about setting boundaries, and I have seen people kind of lose their sanity because it sounds a little harsh, but you know, it's hard if you don't set boundaries. And I don't just mean with clients, but with colleagues, with neighbors, with kids, in every area of your life. You decide how people are going to treat you, and that's what setting boundaries is all about. You teach people how to treat you. I try not to sneeze here. So how do you set boundaries? What does it even mean to set a boundary? Well, in my case, a lot of times, because I do work from home, a lot of times people believe that I am constantly available, that because I am in my house, that I am available to them whenever they want. And it's kind of worse with clients, because then they think that, well, since I work from home, I work 24 hours, 7 days a week, and so I should be able to really kind of answer questions and stuff anytime, have meetings with them anytime. But, you know, like any good professional, I set boundaries right out the gate. I tell my clients what my business hours are, which is not 24/7. It is 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, Mountain Time. If they have a need to discuss something a little bit after 5, I'll probably make an exception for that. But I try to stick to those hours, because I do have a family and I do have other responsibilities, and that's usually how I do explain things. I had a client recently ask me to meet with him on a Saturday, and I just kind of, you know, said, and this is completely true, I have plans with my family on Saturday. I've made another commitment. And then I pointed out, you know, I do have office hours, and it's banker's hours. That's basically what it is. Why? Why do I even have office hours? Well, I said, when I first started working from home, the challenge really wasn't with my clients, although there were challenges with my clients. I had a client actually invite herself over for dinner because she thought she needed to be right here with me in my house. And I was relieved when she opted not to continue my services. This is even before I did bookkeeping full-time. I was doing a lot of transcription for her. And, you know, I appreciated, she was my first client in my first business, and so I really appreciated her, but that didn't mean that that it was okay for her to invite herself over for my family dinner and then criticize my cooking. And I am a very good cook, so it was really kind of shocking that she was critical of something the butcher had done. I was serving boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I didn't bone or skin the chicken thighs, and she complained that there was a piece of bone in it. And I was like, really? First you come to my house uninvited, and now you're criticizing my cooking. I just thought it was kind of strange. I still do. This client was a very kind person, and I really appreciated her, but it just felt, you know, like there were just no boundaries. Like she just felt like it was perfectly okay to say and do and consume whatever she wanted. Kind of by way of comparison, I have in my family, we talk about refrigerator privileges. And that means that not everybody that comes into my house has the privilege to go in through my fridge. If it's someone I really care about, not only do they get to go through my fridge, they get to eat the very last piece of fried chicken. You know, without asking first. That's when it's a real true friend. And so this really was impinging on a business relationship, and you know, trying to turn it into a personal relationship, which might have been fine if it was discussed, but again, it was uninvited, and it was very awkward. So at that point, I realized that I needed to set boundaries in my professional life. I also need to set boundaries in my personal life. There are times when it's okay to breach those boundaries, and that's in very rare cases if it's an emergency. An example of that would be several years ago, I was really just getting traction working from home without doing call center work, so I didn't have to have it perfectly quiet in the house. And I was just started my virtual assistant business, and one of my neighbors on the other end of the building knocked on my door, opened my door, and said, "Donna, I have to take my baby to the hospital. Would you watch my toddler?" And pushed her little boy into the house and shut the door and left. And I thought, well, she's not the type to do that. She is very respectful of my time. It turned out that she did have an emergency with her baby, and she just didn't know where else to turn. But she did know that although I was at home working, she knew I was home, and that if she did that, I wasn't going to turn her little boy out. And the reason I'm telling you that is, there's times when not only is it okay to breach boundaries, it is necessary, but those times should be few and far between. In 14 years of working from home, I can remember one time where it was done and acceptable. Some examples of times when it wasn't okay to breach boundaries. In the middle of tax season, I don't do taxes personally. I don't enjoy doing taxes, so I don't do them. But I was working. I have a ton of work to do during tax season. That's when everybody kind of remembers that they need to do their bookkeeping, and I really kind of get swamped, and everybody wants it done, yesterday. And so even though I don't do a lot of rush business like that, we were bringing in a lot of new clients, and I was talking to accountants. I was working a few extra hours, and I was being very clear with people that, thou shalt not bother me in the first quarter of the year until after April 15th, and even then, don't even bother me till the 1st of May because I'm exhausted. And I spend the last quarter of the year, I start telling people, don't bother me after the end of the year. I'm going to be swamped. Don't bother me because I have a lot of work to do. And some of that's hope. I actually prefer to be very busy. And a lot of it was, I was very, very busy. And I had a couple of ladies that wanted to come by my house and talk to me, which was fine, except that it was tax season. And they called and they asked if it was okay, and I said, no, it's not. It's not a good time. This is tax season. I really do not want to be disturbed until after tax day. And evidently they didn't know what the word no means because they showed up anyway. And I was outraged. Not necessarily because they showed up, but because they called and they asked permission and permission was denied. And so they decided that I didn't really mean it, I guess, and decided, well, we'll show up and talk to her anyway. And I was angry because it felt like what they were saying was, your wants and desires are not important. Your needs and the need, to take care of your family and to provide for your family are less important than our need to come talk to you. And by the way, these were both very young and married ladies. And they just didn't get, I have teenagers, I have a lot going on, I work, and I'm divorced, so I'm the sole breadwinner. So it was just, the underlying message was very much that what I wanted did not matter, that they were going to do whatever they wanted regardless. And so I actually asked them to not be in my life anymore. It was that bad. There's a lot of talk on the internet about a narcissistic personality disorder, and a lot of that does have to do with refusing to recognize boundaries. Boundaries are healthy. They're important. It's important to me. It's healthy to me to be able to at least mentally close the door on my work day and know that I'm done for the day. It's healthy for me to do that. It's healthy for me to step away from the computer, and not think about work for a few hours. It's healthy for me to set the boundary that, at this time I'm going hiking and I am not available. And at this time I'm doing things with my family and I am not available. And, and maybe what I'm busy doing is I'm busy doing nothing, but that's what I'm busy doing. I also have some boundaries, when it comes to my professional life. One of them is I don't allow frequent interruptions into my day. I realize people are going to email me whenever they need to, which is fine. It's great. I prefer email. If they need to text me, they're welcome to text me. If they need to get me in a chat room, they're welcome to do that too. But I have certain times set aside for responding to emails, texts, chats, phone calls. If I'm in the middle of a project, I will not answer the phone. It's not that I'm trying to avoid anyone. I will return those calls at a later time when I can actually focus. Otherwise, I try to multitask, and multitasking usually means that I'm not listening to the person on the phone and I'm still trying to work. So I consider it very rude to the other person. So I won't answer the phone if I'm in the middle of something and I need to focus on what I'm doing. I will call that person back as soon as I get to a stopping point. And that's, a lot of that is concern for the other person. If they're calling me, they deserve to have 100% of my attention, not 10%. And I am not an audio person, if that makes sense. I am visual. That's why I laugh and I go, I don't do audiobooks. I do real books with words on a page or on a screen. I've been just devastated. I broke my tablet last night, my big 10-inch tablet, and I'm waiting for insurance to replace it, and now I'm having to read all my books on my phone, which is small. So, I know a lot of people that swear by audiobooks, and I do listen to them sometimes, but I notice that if I'm focused on something that I'm looking at, anyone talking to me becomes kind of white noise. And so if they're calling to talk to me, I assume it's important. Sometimes it's one of my siblings that just wants to chat, which is still important. Or it's my son who's at the Boy Scout National Jamboree right now. When he calls, I drop everything for him, and I give him my full attention. I don't try to do other things when I'm on the phone because my brain is more wired towards visual and less wired towards audio. It's like I enjoy music, but I have to actually stop and pay attention to it a lot of times. Because otherwise it just becomes white noise. It just becomes something that is going on in the background. I love classical music. I love music with lots of timpani drums, and the Olympics themes are some of my favorites. But if I don't pay attention to it, if I don't sit down and I put my full attention on listening, then I really don't hear it. And I don't know if that makes sense to anybody but me, but if all I'm doing is listening to something, I will listen deeply. But if I'm listening and trying to do something else, then I'm just hearing it, and that's not the same thing. Then someone can tell me to do something, and it won't connect. And I'll answer, yeah, sure, I'll take care of that right away. And then 10 minutes later go, oh, they asked me to do something, and I have no idea because I didn't take the time to write it down, or because I wasn't really giving them 100% of my attention. So I set boundaries as far as phone calls, emails. Again, if I get interrupted in the middle of a project, it becomes difficult for me to get back onto task. And I don't know if I'm the only one that's like this, but this is the way it is for me. So if I get interrupted, there's some environments where it's more okay to interrupt, and then there's other times if I'm really focused on something, and I do hyper-focus. The kids laugh and say the house could burn down around me. It's kind of like my mom used to say when I was growing up, and I've always been a bookworm and a bibliophile. She said the house could burn down around me, and all I would notice was that it was getting dark and hard to see my book. And I am like that about a lot of things, where I'm so focused, I'm so intensely focused on something that the earth could come to an end, and I might not even notice. So knowing that about myself, this is a lot of, if you know yourself, then you know what your boundaries should be. And I've taken a lot of time to learn myself, to get to know myself. And that's one of the things that I've noticed. If I get sidetracked, it's difficult for me to get back on track without an actual written list of what I need to do next. So I set boundaries about what time clients can contact me. It's not that I don't care about my clients. On the contrary, it is because I do care about my clients, and I believe they deserve the very best that I can give them. The very best that I can give them means there's times when I can't be interrupted. The very best that I can give them means that if they need a meeting, it can't be at a time when I'm wishing I was with my kids, because then I'm not really giving them my full attention. Because I care about my clients, I want to give them 100%. And I can't do that if I'm starting to feel stretched thin, which I do if everybody's pulling and pushing at me and it's going on all day and all night. So I have office hours, and I know that at 5 o'clock is really the official end of my day, except for these videos, and then that's when I do these videos. Then I know anything I do after that, I don't have to respond to any interruptions. I can respond and say, my day ends at 5. I may choose to work later, but texts, phone calls, and emails will not be responded to, or they won't be received by anyone I'm talking to till the next day, if it's professional. If it's personal, of course, depending on the person, there's people that I will text with till 3 in the morning without even blinking. But then there's other people that kind of like everyone else. There's certain people I don't want in my life. But there's a lot more that I do. Setting boundaries actually means that you're taking time for yourself too. It's impossible to pour from an empty cup. It's impossible. I'm speaking as a mom, as a single mom. As a single mom, it is difficult at best for me to give my kids 100% of the time. So I have, and they're grown now. They're teenagers. The youngest one's 14. So it's not like I have to give them 100% like I did when they were toddlers. And I was spending my whole day, keeping them out of stuff, teaching them and reading to them, and it was much more intensive. As they've gotten older, a lot of it has been knowing that mom's there without necessarily being 100% engaged with them. They know I'm here if they need it, if they need me. So I set boundaries so that I can take care of me. I set boundaries so that I don't, this is what you don't want people to do. I don't want to look at my phone and go, oh, they're calling again, and it's 10 o'clock at night. Jeez, these people. I simply don't answer the phone unless it's a friend after 5 or 6. They want to call me at 11 or 10, at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. And I don't answer the phone, by the way, for anyone but my closest friends and my kids after 9 p.m. And today's world is so interconnected. People do really believe that they can get a hold of you anytime, anywhere, for any reason. And I just let people know right out of the gate that I have work time and I have personal time, and I let them know when I'm available, when I'm not. Another way to set boundaries is I do not allow myself to be voluntold to do anything. This is voluntold, by the way, is a military term that's like mandatory fun. When I was an Army dependent, my second husband was in the Army. My dad was in the Army. My brother is currently in the Army. And so, you know, coming from the Army, I'm very, very used to military, specifically the Army. Not so used to the Marines and the Navy, but Army and Air Force, we're all about that. Voluntold is when you need someone to volunteer, and instead of letting them actually volunteer, you assign it to them. And it doesn't matter if it's convenient for them. It doesn't matter if it's a good time for them. It doesn't matter if they have other obligations. They are expected to drop everything. And I understand that in the military because the military owns you. I've had other volunteer organizations that I have been a part of that adopt that, and I'm a little contrary. I am one of those that as soon as if you tell me, you know, I would like you to do this, I will work with you to do that. As soon as I start hearing people say, you have to, you're assigned to, you're required to, I'm probably not going to. You know, just because that's part of my personality to be a little bit rebellious, hopefully in a good way. It's kind of like when I first moved to Utah, I wore my seatbelt, religiously, absolutely religiously. Car didn't move till everyone was seatbelted. Then they passed a seatbelt law, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I stopped wearing my seatbelt. Is it because I don't think it's safe? No, it has nothing to do with that. It's because it went from we're going to advise you to, this is a very good idea, to we're going to force you to. And again, it's not something that I do very well. I'm starting to wear it a little bit more now. So if you're a cop and watching this and you pull me over, I will probably have my seatbelt on. But it's just kind of that mentality that I have of you can ask, but as soon as you go from asking to telling, unless you are in a position, if you are someone who's earned the right, and by that, you know, the people that would be allowed to tell me would never tell me. If that makes any sense. The people in my life that are important and valuable to me, that I would allow them to tell me to do things, are the ones that they just never would. My parents kind of come to mind. My parents will always ask, they won't tell. My siblings might try to tell, some of them, depending on which one. But they probably know me well enough to know that as soon as they say, you have to, I will dig in my heels. And I wear 5-inch stilettos, so that's a lot of heel. And say, no, I don't. You know, I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one that has that mentality about things. I'm fine with being asked. I am not okay with being ordered. That's why I never joined the Army myself. So that's kind of a boundary I have. If you ask, I will find a way to make it work. If you tell me, if you require it, and that's what the military calls voluntold. Not volunteered, voluntold. Scouting is an organization, the Boy Scouts of America. I will volunteer for that all day long. All day long. I love the Boy Scouts. I love the Girl Scouts. I love anything to do with Robert Baden-Powell. He's one of my great heroes. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I've had people then turn around and say, well, if you want to join our organization, you are required to teach a class. And I go, I'm a single mom. I'm a single mom with a more than full-time job and 2 kids at home, 3 grandkids, believe it or not, and you know, a very, very, very full life, and I'm trying to make space to do things, and you're going to tell me? It's a good way to lose me. And I understand why they say that. It's a few people don't want to get stuck with doing everything, but then there's no wiggle room for those of us that simply can't. But then again, if they had asked instead of told, I probably would have been over backwards for them. It's just kind of one of those things. And that is a boundary I have. I will, you know, if you ask me to do anything, I'll do it. Or I will explain why I can't. If you tell me I have to, there will be no explaining. The answer will be no. That's just my contrary personality. So that's a boundary I have. Another boundary I have is that I live in a townhouse. The bedrooms are upstairs. The main living area is downstairs. It's a split level. And so when people come over, a boundary that we have is nobody is allowed upstairs. Nobody is allowed in my bedroom. My son Jared will let his friends into his bedroom occasionally because they like to play video games up there. But I have to know about it. That's just a boundary I have to keep to make me feel safe in my home. And fortunately, Jared's friends are pretty awesome. And again, one of the boundaries that I've really had to enforce has been just because my car is outside and you know that I'm here in my house, it does not mean I'm available. It means that I'm working. It just means that I'm in the house breathing in and out, converting oxygen to carbon dioxide. And so, a boundary that I do have is that if people want to visit with me, they need to call or text ahead of time. They can stop by, but they better be prepared for me to say, I can't right now, I'm busy. Another boundary that I have is I have a no soliciting sign on my door because I do not and will not allow strangers to come knock on my door and harass my kids. In fact, the only people that I allow to come selling door to door is Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. If you're a scout, especially if you're selling Thin Mints, you are welcome. If you are scouting for food, you're welcome. If you are friends of scouting, you are welcome. If you are being dropped off in the neighborhood to sell so many bottles of magic cleaner that doesn't really work very well anyway, you are not welcome. It's just a matter of teaching people how to treat you. So that's really kind of what I wanted to talk about with boundaries. It's just about teaching people how to treat you. And it's not hard. It's a lot of being consistent about the first thing is to define what your boundaries are. When I started having clients that were showing up for dinner uninvited, or that was kind of extreme, or calling me at 11:30 at night, and that really has happened. That's when I really, really dug in my heels and said, I have office hours. I was actually raised that it is rude to contact someone before 9 a.m. or after 9 p.m. And so when people try to reach out to me at 7:30 in the morning, I don't answer. In fact, my phone's on Do Not Disturb from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. or 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. other way around, because that's my time. That's my time. So if unless you are one of 4 people, 3 of whom I have given birth to, and you try to call me, you are not going to get me. It will automatically and immediately go directly to voicemail without even ringing the phone, because that's how I set it up. And that is an effective way of really setting that boundary. And then the person that calls can leave a voicemail or they can text, and I will respond to it the next day during business hours. Otherwise, I get run ragged from pillar to post. Another way to set boundaries. If you have someone that calls you all the time in a business setting, especially in a business setting, if you have someone that calls you all the time, and they take up a lot of your time, there's nothing wrong with telling them, look, I am really busy. I understand that you have a lot that you want to go over with me, but every time I get interrupted, it makes it harder for me to work. So let's set up a meeting. It could be a daily meeting. It could be twice daily. But let's set up this time. Please make an agenda of what you want to talk about. Make a list of what you want to talk about. And I have talked to people that I've literally had to tell them, you get 1 minute to talk, and then I get 1 minute to talk. Or you get 3 minutes to talk, and then I get 3, and I'm timing you, because otherwise it's just a matter of listening to them listen to themselves talk and not letting me say the things that I need to say. In fact, I think it's very professional to do that. I have worked with people that have needed that level of hand-holding, and I allow it for, you know, maybe a week or two while they're getting used to the system. But if it continues, then I start telling them, look, if you need to have a daily meeting, that's great. Let's put that on the schedule. Let's set a boundary for it. So if you need to talk to me every day, well then why don't you call me at 10 o'clock a.m. I will set aside from 10 to 11 a.m. to listen to all of your concerns. And then I will take care of it. I've watched friends just be run ragged by this kind of person that, again, it's a matter of not recognizing boundaries. It's a matter of, well, let me call and ask you to do something. Let me call you 2 minutes later and ask you why you didn't do it. Let me interfere in your job in the guise of trying to help. You know, if they need a little bit of hand-holding, some people do, but you can kind of put boundaries on it if it starts to go on too long. And that's an effective way of doing it, is just saying, look, I'm trying to get everything done that you've asked me to do, but I can't because I'm spending a lot of time on the phone with you, and I'm happy to talk to you. But so that you know that I'm getting the work done, and so that you are comfortable knowing that I am responsive to your needs, and because you like, you know, maybe you're someone that really likes to talk on the phone to discuss this stuff, let's make a meeting. Let's start the day with this conversation. Please write down your agenda and email it to me. And because I want to address everything that you have in mind. I think it's actually more polite to the client, and it's polite to the person that's doing the work. Because now the client is going to start feeling like what they have to say is so important that I have to put it on my calendar because I don't want to miss it. And I start to feel like, okay, I have some breathing room, I can get this work done. Then when I talk to them tomorrow morning, I can return and report and tell them I got everything done that we discussed yesterday morning. Now, what else? I just feel like setting boundaries is incredibly important, and I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily know how to go about doing that. So I am going to call it good for tonight. I am personally wiped out, and I have a lot that I need to do over the weekend. So, oh, if you are in Utah, you already know. For those of you outside of Utah, Monday, July 24th is Pioneer Day. It is the day that Utahns celebrate the arrival of Brigham Young and the Mormons into the Salt Lake Valley, and it is a state holiday. So banks will be closed. I don't know if mail will run. It's not a federal holiday, so I would imagine it will. But it's kind of odd when you're not from, especially if you happen to be outside the state on the 24th of July, because it's not a holiday anywhere outside of Utah. Members of the LDS Church celebrate it with picnics and stuff, but it's not a big holiday outside of Utah. So I do not know if I will be on Monday. I may record a video and schedule it for Monday afternoon, but if I don't broadcast, that would be why. I wish you all the success and have a wonderful weekend. I will talk to you soon.